Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Cole. It's Sunday evening, March 30th, and this is the Week 3 announcement for Political Science 1013, Spring 2025 on the second 8-week schedule. Well, okay, everybody, we've gotten through Exam 1, and I've put out a set of announcements this afternoon, getting ready for Exam 2 on April 11th. And also our second discussion, which we're going to do Tuesday and Wednesday of this week, the 1st and 2nd of April. And everybody, we will probably do another discussion before the exam, because we've got to get in 5 discussions, so at some point we've got to double up and get in 2 discussions between exams. And I think I will try to do that before the midterm exam. All right, so the second discussion will be Tuesday and Wednesday, the 1st and 2nd, and I've asked you to look at a couple of things. They're pretty short, I believe, articles about recent goings-on at the Washington Post, going back to October, through the election and in the aftermath of the election. So see what you think of what is going on with the Washington Post, which is owned by Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon.com. Okay, so take a look at that, and we will discuss that Tuesday and Wednesday for your second discussion. Now then, everybody, for the midterm exam, Exam 2, on April 11th, we've got to get in Unit 3 on the mass media and Unit 4 on the Constitution. Now, of the 2 units, the media unit is a fairly short unit, and the Constitution unit, Unit 4, is much longer. So you might want to spend 2 or 3 days on the mass media unit and then move on to the Constitution in order to get ready for the exam. I sent a separate announcement out about the Unit 4 reading assignment, which is quite lengthy, several chapters from the textbook. I tried to emphasize in that announcement what's most important, so what you would want to look at most closely and what you might want to skim over relatively quickly if you press for time on that. So let me discuss very quickly Unit 3 and get started on Unit 4 on the Constitution. We will finish up with that next time, about a week from now, which will be my last announcement before the exam on the 11th. All right. Excuse me, everybody. Now, in Unit 3, we try to do just a couple of things in a relatively short time. We want to look at the media landscape as a whole and different kinds of media. And we're largely concerned with the issue of old media versus new media. Okay, old media being newspapers and television largely, and new media being internet-based or computer-based or digital media, podcasts, social media apps, and the like. It looks like old media is being supplanted by new media to a considerable extent, but we don't know exactly how that's going to level out or where the balance is going to be struck. I might mention, much of what you see in new media is commentary on stories that have been reported in old media, if you will. So you have perhaps more commentary than reporting in new media. It's also worth noting that in new media, very often what you have is individuals podcasting or posting to Instagram or TikTok on their own without the mediation of an editor. Okay, whereas in a newspaper, anything that is published generally has to be run by an editor, and the editor will not allow just anything to be published. On the other hand, in social media, an individual can say just about anything. It's what some people call cheap speech. So is it necessarily trustworthy? It's worth keeping in mind that in social media and new media in general, very often what you have is people saying just whatever they please. So that's worth keeping in mind as you try to evaluate what's trustworthy in the media and what's not. Uh, so we talk about new media and old media, television, newspapers, also radio, magazines, many different kinds, but principally in the old media we're talking about newspapers and television, and then various forms of new media. Then we try to finish up with issues that arise in media coverage, and perhaps the most important issue would be bias in the media. Okay. Media are always suspect of harboring one kind of bias or another. It's very difficult to say much about what's going on with offering a judgment or an opinion about it. It's hard to cover it as a reporter without having a point of view on it. So bias will often be an issue. The Trump administration thinks that new media is friendlier to it than old media. That's fairly obvious. So maybe new media is correcting for the bias in old media, perhaps with biases of its own. And that's for us to judge, but we need to look at media with a critical eye and not take at face value everything that's being served up to us. All right, so that's what we try to do in the unit on media. Okay. Let me then get started very quickly on Unit 4 on the Constitution, and we will finish up on that next time. And we'll try to get ready for our exam on the 11th. You've got 4 articles to read in addition to the material assigned from the textbook for Units 3 and Unit 4. I think you've got 2 things to read about media and 2 about the Constitution. We'll have more to say about that next time. Within the Constitution unit, we try to go all the way back to the beginning of the American colonies in roughly 1620 or so. And what we emphasize there is we went for about 150 years with the British, by and large, leaving the colonies alone. But then as we get into the 1760s, 1770s especially, a situation develops, much of it has to do with the French and Indian Wars, when the British begin to start asking more of the colonists than they had before, especially in the way of taxes. And so the colonists come to suspect that they're going to be subjugated. And we know the slogan was heard about in the land, no taxation without representation. So one thing leads to another. The Annapolis Convention is held. Okay. After the Revolutionary War is concluded. During the Revolutionary War, we were operating under our first Constitution, which was called the Articles of Confederation. And as time passed, the Articles of Confederation came to be seen as less and less adequate. They were only around for about a decade or so before agitation began to set in on behalf of the idea of a stronger national government, especially on part of the Federalists, men like Madison and Hamilton, who preferred a stronger government, as opposed to the anti-Federalists who supported local prerogative and were opposed to a stronger national government. But their views didn't carry the day. The Federalists won out. There was a series of meetings and conventions held. There was the Annapolis Convention and finally the Philadelphia Convention, which results in the Constitution being proposed and eventually ratified and going into effect, I believe, in 1789. Now, what we try to do next is go through the Constitution in some detail. We start with the original 7 articles, and keep in mind some of the provisions of the original 7 articles have been changed by subsequent amendments. We spend quite a bit of time on Article 1 because it establishes Congress. It sets up the Senate and the House of Representatives as 2 different chambers with different characteristics. And then it attempts to grant powers to the federal government or the national government and to place limits on those powers. Okay. Articles 2 and 3 establish the executive and judicial branches, and it's worth taking a quick look at 4, 5, 6, and 7, Article 4 especially, I think. All right. Then we go on to talk about the constitutional amendments, especially the Bill of Rights the amendments added after the Civil War, especially the 14th Amendment, and we have a bit to say about the 25th Amendment before we move on to talk about issues of federalism, civil rights, and civil liberties at the very end of Unit 4. You notice you have a chapter in the textbook on each of those, federalism, civil rights, and civil liberties. We discussed those briefly at the end of the class notes. So I mentioned you want to look, maybe if you press for time, briefly at those chapters 3 through 5 in the textbook, and maybe read chapter 2 about the Constitution as a whole more closely. Now, before we get to the Bill of Rights, we stop to get the Constitution ratified, and that is where the Federalist Papers come in, especially Federalist Papers numbers 10 and 51. They're in the appendix to your textbook, and I have discussion, kind of a summary of the contents of them in the class notes. Now, these were written by James Madison. It's been fairly well established. And in these essays, James Madison is telling us why the Constitution is the way it is. Now, these are regarded as very important documents in American history and American government, especially Federalist Papers numbers 10 and 51. Madison had a great deal to do with the content of the Constitution. He was an expert on the contents of constitutions throughout history and drew upon that knowledge in the Constitutional Convention. So please take a look at those. It'll take you a few minutes, take you a little while to read through them because the language is archaic. It's 18th century language. But we include a summary of the contents that I hope will be helpful to you in the class notes. So we will stop at that point and pick up on the remainder of the Constitution next time, beginning with the Bill of Rights. So, discussion coming up, let's see now, on Tuesday and Wednesday, the 1st and 2nd, about the Washington Post. Then we're looking ahead to our midterm exam on the 11th. So I hope you will take part in that discussion. Contact me with any issues, questions, or problems through the course website or at david.co@opsu.edu. Study hard, take it easy, and we'll talk to you again about a week from now. That will be on or about, let's see, Sunday, I guess that would be Sunday the 6th. Be the last time I'll talk to you before our exam on Friday the 11th. So take it easy, and we'll be talking to you about a week from now at this time.